Hey everybody, Steven Jodger here from Gonna Geek Gear and from Better Podcasting, here with a follow-up video to my previous Zoom L-12 walkthrough. That's right, it's been a year since I've had that walkthrough video posted online, and I thought it was a good opportunity to do a follow-up video. So if you haven't checked that out, it's geeks.link/L12. That was the basic walkthrough that I went through. I can't believe how many people checked out that video, as well as how many questions were asked over there. I tried my best to answer every single question to the best of my knowledge, but if I missed your question, my sincere apologies. Today with this walkthrough, I'm going to build off of that. So there's going to be some different aspects of the L12 that I didn't talk about previously, some clarification on some other things, and just some technical information based off of all of those questions that I got over the last year. So I hope this video helps clarify some more information about the Zoom L12. And at the end, I'll just do a little bit of a debrief about my year with the L12 to hopefully give you some more insight to how it's worked for me. And again, I'm building off the previous video, so this isn't going to be a basic walkthrough. If you missed the previous video, please check it out because it will be in the description. This is going to build off of that previous one, so some of those basic aspects, a lot of them, won't be covered in this video. Let's get started here. So let's start off with the headphone jacks that we've got. So the headphone jacks are something that I've had a lot of different questions about, and that's because of the possibilities on how they can be used. I'll start off with some clarification on how they function. So you'll see that there is we'll call them headphones channel A, B, C, D, and E. Those correspond with what you see down here, A, B, C, D, and E. And what these all are essentially different mixes. So you've got your master mix, and then you have your A mix, and your B mix, and your C mix, and your D, and your E. So these letters here are directly correlated to these outputs here, which of course also correlate with the actual headphone jacks right here. So the way that that works is that if you set up A with levels one way, that means that the headphones A, so what's coming out of here or here for A, will end up hearing that mix. And the same goes with B, C, D, and E. So you can have a whole bunch of different mixes, meaning if you have somebody plugged into A, they can hear things differently than B. So like when I'm recording generally with A, because I'm running my lines kind of uncompressed to some of the people who are coming in, or compared to the people coming in, then I often run myself a little bit higher because otherwise I can't hear myself as well. I want to hear, do I have noise of kids yelling in the background or whatever. So I sometimes run that a little louder than what's actually going into the master mix. The other thing that I'll clarify with this as well is that these are TRS jacks. So some people were wondering if they were. Yes, they are TRS jacks. Now, in regards to the headphones, one of the things that I'll mention a little bit later is sort of how that all corresponds with effects. So I will get to that, but I'll cover a little bit more of that as we go through some of the other features. But that's all that I wanted to talk about with the headphone jacks. The only other thing that I'll just say, and I did have this in the previous video, is that these are the way that you adjust the volume for each headphones jack. And if you want, you can have each headphone jack listen to the master mix. So like right now, the A channel, that is listening to the A mix. But if I wanted this A channel to be listening to the master, I can just untoggle that, and now it's listening to the master mix. So that's how that all works with the headphones jack. Moving on to the next thing, I want to talk briefly about panning. So the way that panning works, and I'm just going to turn that back to A just for S and Gs. The way that panning works with this is all you need to do is select the channel that you want to pan. So like, let's say that we want to change this one right here. We hit the select button, and now that essentially activates all of these digital knobs here. And if I want to go ahead and pan this channel over to the right, all that I need to do is take this panning knob and turn it over to the right as much as I want to go. If I want to go all the way over, there it's all the way over. And the way that this works, just to clarify, is what that is panning is this specific channel that I've selected across all of these different mixes. Some people were wondering, if I adjust this to a little bit over, does that affect all of these different channels? No, it doesn't. It only affects the one that you've got selected. So like here, this is, if I put this back to center, well, that's going to be center, but if I take it over to the left, then it's left for master, for A, for B, for C, for D, for E, and so forth. So that's the way that that works. But if I go and I select 6, you'll see this is now showing center again. You should be able to see that there, but it's gone away from the side. But if I go back to 7 again, you can see that all the way over to the left. And again, switching back to 6, you should see, oh, wrong button. You see 6. Now we're back up to center. So that's just to clarify there, and I'll go ahead and put that back to center because that's actually what I'm monitoring through right now is this channel here. So that's the way that that works. Yes, to clarify, it only impacts the channel you have selected, but across all of the different mixes. So I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear. Some people did have some questions about that. Now, here's one that a lot of people have had a lot of questions about, and I can't believe I sort of underestimated how many questions were going to be asked about this. And this is the effects. So let me walk through how to use the effects on the Zoom L-12. So again, we'll just go and select the channel we want to. We'll start off here with channel 7. If I want to go ahead and activate this, there's a couple things you need to know. Number one is you're going to need to set your entire effects bus. So we'll go ahead and put that up to 0. If I go ahead and put that up to 0, I'll put that down to A. Just for how, again, I'm actually monitoring through A right now. So if you can follow sort of the information, I'm on A right now. And what this here is doing, this effects, is I'm setting the overall effects level for the bus A. So for the output A, the mix A. And then what I need to do is if I'm going to select a specific channel, now I'm going to say how much effects do I want on that channel. So again, let's pretend we're going to go over here and then say, okay, well, I want to do 7. I put select. And now what I need to do is come over here and under this, or take this knob and adjust this all the way up to where I want for how much effects I have for this channel right here. So if I go over to master, you'll see this effects return here. That's the amount of effects for the overall master. And if I go back to A, you'll see it's a little bit different of a level. So I can go ahead and I can have, if I want master having more effects coming through than A, or I can shut them all off for A. So this is really the sort of global control of effects. So out of all the channels, everything that's set up, how much is this specific mix getting of the effects? So again, you could have one person listening with effects, one without, which is pretty flexible there. The other thing that I want to mention is as far as how you do the effects, we can turn that down a little bit here. We can just, the type of effect, if I want, I just click on that. And now it's going to allow me to go and change to what any one of these ones that I have got here, any of these options. So when I've selected what I want, I push the button down, and now you should hear there that it is switched over. So that's how you use the effects. Now, here's the thing, is up until like a month ago, and I'll go ahead and shut this back off. Up until a month ago, the effects were actually only going to the master bus. So the effects themselves were only heard through the master, or if you were recording the master to the SD card. Nowhere else did you hear it. If you had headphone jack, if you had, or any of the headphone outputs set up, you didn't hear the effects, no matter what you did. The firmware update version 2 just came out, I believe it was in September, and that did change it. So now you can actually send the effects to any of these, which is great because if you do have different people plugged into these different mixes, you might want them to hear the effects. So by doing that, you now have that option where more than just the master can hear the effects. The thing that's important to know, though, is that the effects don't go to the SD card. So if you are recording the individual channels, like here you see I've got this one recording and I've got this one recording. If you're recording those individual channels, they're not going to hear the effects applied. However, the master mix will. So if you are recording the master mix onto channels 13 and 14 in the SD card, you will hear it, but the other ones are not. So it's important that people keep that in mind, because if they're only recording the individual channels, you're not going to hear any effects that you apply. But I was really happy to see that firmware update come out, because the way that I use that, essentially I have different participants listening on here. So if I went and I hooked up some effects, they wouldn't hear that at all before, but now they do. So that firmware update's great. And it actually shows the possibility, the flexibility of something digital like the L-12, that they can go and they can change some of the routing. Because if you looked at the way that the wiring diagram was before, how it is everything, the signal diagram, how it's all set up, you would see that the effects were essentially before this split, so to speak, of the headphones output. So it's great that this shows that they can go and digitally change that around. And that's great hope for the future and possibilities of what Zoom can maybe do if enough people request a change to something. So that was really good to see. So the bottom line is that to activate the effects, what you have to do is have this set up. So again, this is sort of the overall how much effects are going out, the volume for each individual mix. So you have to have that set to a level. Then you go and you select a channel that you want, and then you turn up the effects to the level that you want for that channel, and then you select the effect to whatever effect that you want. Okay, that one's really weird. We'll turn that back off. But the thing that you need to know is that the effect that you choose is global. So like if I go and you'll see I've got that set right there. If I go and I choose another channel, and then I go and I change this, we'll go and switch this over to Hall. If I come back to channel 7, it's still on Hall. So the effect is global across the board. So you can't have one type of effect on one channel, another on another. So everybody has the same effect. But again, with the way that the effects have been changed to the headphones output, you never know what's possible in the future. And if that's a request, I'd say email it into Zoom, because maybe if they get enough, who knows? Maybe they'll put something in place. If you have any other questions about the effects with that, let me know. I tried to cover everything that I was asked in regard to the effects, but if I missed anything, just let me know. The only last thing that I'll actually say is that there is a specific mute button for the effects. So if you want to have effects enabled, you definitely can. You can have them enabled, and then if you want, you can just hit mute and it'll mute it. And that does work like the other mutes. That does mute it across all buses. So anybody that has effects enabled on any of the different mixes, as soon as you hit mute, they won't have that anymore. So that mutes it across everything. So again, if you have any questions on that, let me know. All right. Another question that I had quite often come up was about EQ. How does EQ work? Very, very similar. If you want to select a channel, you click on the channel that you want to select, and you won't actually hear this reflected in the edited version. But if you select the channel that you want, then you go and adjust these knobs here how you want. So if you go and you turn up the highs, you would end up having it a lot more present in the high, or again, the lows, you could do that. But it's just as simple as that. You go and you select the channel, you make the adjustments you want, and I'll just kind of get these lights to show here so that you can see. As soon as I go off this channel, you'll see that those switch, because now they're showing me the settings for channel 6. If I go back to channel 7, you'll see there's those settings that I left off. So it all of this area kind of works the same way. Is you select a channel and then make the adjustments that you want. The thing that you should know with the EQ is it's a little bit different than the effects routing, but overall the same. The bottom line is what you need to know is that the EQ doesn't show up in the individual channel recordings, but the master mix, of course, will have it as well. If you go to any of the individual outputs, they'll hear that as well. But the master mix will have it. So just know that the way that the EQ works is pretty similar now to the way that the effects were, but you won't, again, get that on the final result with the individual channels, just like the effects were. So if you think that this EQ is going to be reflected in your individual channel recordings, you won't have that. Now, along similar lines to what we just discussed, the compression. A lot of people have asked about how the one knob compression works. It's pretty straightforward. You go over to the channel that you want to add some one knob compression, and you turn it up to however much compression you want. And there's no settings. There's no real adjustment with it. But you'll hear as I'm adjusting this, you're hearing compression come in and out. So that is something that you would just set it as much as you want. Now, the way that I use this is I kind of try to keep in mind my recording, but also my live experience. So you'll see some of these have quite a bit of compression. Some of them have just a little. Generally, I try to just ride a little bit of compression, because here's the thing with the compression. The compression is one of the things that actually will end up in your individual channel mixes. So if I'm recording with a whole bunch of compression on this channel, this individual channel recording on the SD card will have that compression applied. So I try to run just a little bit so that it evens it out for the live experience, but then it's not so much so that it drastically changes the recording. I try to do just a little bit and then do sort of my level that I want once I'm processing my files and taking those individual tracks. So it's really important to know that the compression will be on your recordings every which way you look at it. But again, you just set as much as you want. And actually now you can start to hear, and it's clipping now a little bit, but you can actually hear more of my room noise. So it just depends on whether you like it or not, but there really is not much to do other than just turn that up and see where you like it. It's worked okay in some regards, but you know, one knob compression, I've never been wild about on any of the boards that I've had. And this is probably better than some of the ones that I've had. It doesn't sound as just muddy, I guess, but it's still not that great. But yeah, some people asked, so I thought I would demo that there. All right. So here's one that a lot of people have asked about, and it's the SLATE functionality. I can't believe I didn't mention this on the previous video, but the L-12 actually has a SLATE functionality. So in order to do this, I'm going to go ahead and have to shut off this recording. Don't worry. You won't notice anything on the video. I'm recording actually as well through my Zoom H6 right now so that I can do this. But I'll shut off this recording right here. So what I'm going to do is come into the menu, and I'm going to scroll all the way down. That's right, I said scroll to where it says SLATE. And now I push down here, and I can set the level of the SLATE if I want. So how much gain's applied to that. And I can also set what channels it's recording on. So right now you'll see that for some reason out default, it's set to record the SLATE to all of these. The way I like to do this is I like to have it set so that it's only recording to one channel. So like, let's say right now, I've got free here, channel 3. I can go in here, and if I want, I can turn that off and turn that off, or I can just go all the way over here to where it says all clear, press that, and now it's cleared all of my different channels, and just come back over here to channel 3, select that, and then it says hit record to set. So hit record. Now if I go back into routing, you should see that it's all applied. Yes. So then if I want to do this, I'll go ahead and get the recording going. I hit record, wait for that, go play. Okay, so I got another recording going right now. Oh, yeah, now it's going. So now I can go in, I can hit the overdub button, and in theory, nope, sorry, that's not it. I hit the wrong button. It's not overdub. It's SLATE. Press the SLATE button, and now the SLATE is going through channel 3. So channel 3 is going. Actually, you're going to be hearing the mix. So let me go ahead and mute this. So now, in theory, why are you still hearing? In theory, maybe. There we go. Now you should only be hearing the SLATE. You should only be hearing the SLATE right now. Check 1, 2, test 1, 2. So there you go. That's the SLATE. Not anything spectacular, but it's a SLATE function. All right. So there you go. That's how the SLATE works. And hopefully that clears things up for people. I'll go ahead and just stop this recording. I'll just mention sort of what I just did there. I had some people ask about that because it doesn't fall in line with a lot of the ways that Zoom does other products. In order to record, you do have to hit the record button first. Well, first you start here. Let's go ahead and stop that. You start by selecting which tracks you want to record. So you can see this one's recorded, but if I want to add here, this one, I select that. Then you hit record. Then you hit play. And that's how it actually starts recording. So again, a little bit different than the way that Zoom does some of their other products. So worth mentioning again. Okay, now the USB input, there's not much that I can actually demo on the USB input, but I do want to mention something in this video. The way the USB works is there has the capability to send everything through here in a multi-track fashion through the USB. So if you pull up, actually you can do it in Audacity if you select the right options. You can do it with ASIO drivers. You can do it a couple different ways. And you'll get every single individual track coming in through USB. Plus, you'll see there's only up to tracks 12. You'll actually see a track 13 and 14, which is the master mix. So the master mix will automatically come in through what shows up as track or channel 13 and 14, or track 13 and 14, whatever you want to call it. So you can get the master mix coming in to whatever you're recording through the USB. Now, one thing that I want to mention in regards to this is that the way that all works out is that because of the fact that there's tracks 13 and 14 have the master mix, if you are using a piece of software that's only pulling the stereo, the 2-channel signal, you're only going to get tracks 1 and 2. So just keep that in mind. You're only going to get tracks 1 and 2. So if you're wanting the master mix to come in through a stereo piece of software, you're going to have to get a little bit funky if you're not using ASIO drivers and doing some third-party software and whatnot, and probably route it into tracks 1 and 2. And if you got a full board like me, this is usually filled up. If you've got a mostly full board, I should say, it's not really helpful to you to have that. So I wanted to clarify that point. I had a lot of people suggest using 1 and 2, but that's really only an option if you're A, okay with analog, and B, okay to use those up with a master mix feed. The other thing with USB is the USB will go in to the actual board itself. That's actually how I have been operating from my PC into the L-12 for the last, I don't know, better half of the year. It was probably shortly after I recorded the video that I ended up hooking it up. So the way it works is you plug the board into USB into your computer or whatever. It'll show up as a sound card, and then by default, it will output to this track here, to 9 and 10. It does have the capability, again, if you use the right drivers and use the right software, like Windows by default, there's no real way to change it. It'll just go through 9 and 10. But if you use the right software, like if you're using editing software that has the capability, you could potentially route it in to 11 and 12. So you've got 2 USB buses. And the way that you enable that is quite simply just pushing the USB button. So just click that. and it's nearly like an analog connection. So when it is plugged in there, everything else that I could potentially do if I had my PC plugged in directly to there, you can do. So volume, record, all that. It all works the exact same way. And it's a pretty clear signal. I've been pretty impressed with how clear that sound is going into the board. So that's pretty much it for the demo for the L-12, trying to fill some of the gaps of some of the questions I've been asked over the last year. I've been asked about sound bleed between different channels. I have encountered it on occasion. I tried to reproduce it before this video. I couldn't, but I've had it before where if I had something, I think it was actually channel 4 I had, and I had it turned up quite a bit, and I could hear it on channel 3, couldn't hear it on channel 5. So I'm guessing the way that the hardware is, that these are two, I guess buses we'll call them inside. I don't know if that's the right term. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 are probably connected, and 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a random theory. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's sort of my experience. I've had it come in occasionally. I've had it where, again, like before I started recording, I couldn't reproduce it. So it is worth mentioning. Overall, though, my experience for this, I've used it for about a year, and I have to say it's been pretty reliable overall with how I've used it. Now, I will note I am not a musician. I'm using this in more of a podcast broadcast setup where I like to have, if I'm doing a multi-participant podcast or live stream, I like to have everybody on their own channel so that I'm recording them all individually, and I can go and edit them individually and clean it up for the posted final version. But I also often live stream, so I use it as sort of a hybrid of multi-track recorder and a mixer for a live stream. So I am not a musician, and so I've not used the playback function. I probably won't use the playback function. I just don't have a use for it. So I just want to mention that now. I don't actually have experience with that. I want to mention that from a reliability perspective, I actually had an SD card. It's a little generic SP SD card go bad on me, and I didn't lose any recordings in it. It actually, during one of the shows, I saw it come up with an error. I lost a little bit, like a little dropout happened, and I've never had it since I switched the card, but the recording kept. So I thought that was really promising that it didn't just lose its brains altogether when it did end up having a glitch partway. And again, I'm pretty sure it was the SD card because there was an error message that came up. And also, I haven't had it since switching the SD card. The downsides that I've had with this is that the USB drivers are still a little bit irritating to me, even a year in. The fact that the master mix sets on channels 13 and 14 bugs me because, again, that whole stereo problem. If I am using a piece of dumb software, we'll say, I have to somehow use a third-party piece of software to route those in or take up extra channels. It's just frustrating to me that the driver is so basic. I wish that Zoom would release something a little bit better. It's just frustrating to me that they've shoved it at the other end of the board. So when something is pulling the basic stereo mix, it's only getting tracks 1 and 2. So that is still frustrating to me. And again, having to use a third-party piece of software, that's a little bit frustrating. One of the other things that's frustrating to me is the lack of being able to pan per mix. So if I do want to have one channel panned only on the master mix and not on A, B, C, and D, I can't do that. That is a little bit frustrating to me still. I've had a couple of cases where I really would have liked to have been able to do that, but it's not in there. So hopefully, maybe one day with the firmware updates in the future, that'll happen. That's just a random guess, though, at this point. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I had that I did mention in the previous video was a weird clicking noise. When I would say the word hack or something like that, I would often get this large click in the recording. And that's the only way to describe it. I actually, for a long time, actually had to run the isotope declicker on it to get rid of it. And it worked, but it was still frustrating nonetheless. So the L-12 that I actually demoed for you today is actually a different L-12 than the one I originally demoed, because after this problem, I filed a ticket with Zoom and ended up sending it in to them. They sent me a replacement and the same problem happened. So I didn't know what exactly it was, but I tried a whole bunch of different things. I tried the mic directly into the board. Happened less that way, but still happened occasionally. I did try a couple different preamps, have a little generic Behringer one that ended up having the same result. So ultimately what I had to do was shove a DI box in between my DBX 286 and the L-12. The way that I work on a regular basis, I have the microphone into the DBX 286, which then goes into the L-12. Well, I did end up putting that DI box in between the DBX and the L-12. So that did solve it. Now, does that just mean that that clicking noise that I heard is now just happening, whatever it is that happens when I say the word hack, that's just happening in the DI box and that is solving the problem? Or was there an actual signal problem that the DI box itself is fixing? I don't know, but that's how I fixed it. It made me happy that I found a solution of some form, but it's worth mentioning that you could run into that with your equipment. I tried a whole bunch of different things. There's various amount of words that I said. In one of the episodes of the podcast that I do called Better Podcasting, I did demo it. I think there might have been a couple different episodes. We kind of had an ongoing saga on that show for a little while. So if you want to know more about that, I'll try to dig up the time codes. I'll have to go hunting, but I'll see if I can find that so you can kind of hear. I do seem to recall doing a debrief when I finally got the solution fixed. So that's how I fixed that. And hopefully that's good news for people that there was a solve. It was very frustrating to me. It is still a little frustrating. I had to throw a DI box in there, but it is what it is. It's how I solved it. So overall, it's been good to me for the last year. Been happy that I've got it. Yes, I would like to see a couple of things changed, but overall, it's been a great addition. And I don't know if you noticed, but the wiring was a little questionable during this walkthrough because I had to do a bit of switching a while back, and that's sort of my interim wiring until I get things going back to how it was before. But it's been good for that too. So there you go. I didn't have too many problems with different sort of wiring in for the L-12, but I've been really happy with it. If you have any other questions, let me know. I am happy to hopefully answer them. That's what built this video. And if you do like the channel, please do subscribe to it. It's youtube.com/GonnaGeekGear, or just, look down a little bit, click on the icon, hit subscribe button, whatever it is that it says over on the YouTubes. Please do subscribe to that. And if you want to see a future video, maybe next year, because I'm not committing any sooner because I made that mistake last year. Bye.